Outside the Book continues. Albert Schmid joins us now. He's a master chef, and his most recent book is the Kentucky Bourbon Cookbook, an appropriate cookbook from the state of Kentucky, from the Commonwealth. Thanks for being here, Albert.
Oh, hey, my pleasure.
How does one broach? I mean, you're in territory. That's like talking basketball in the state of Kentucky. We talk about their bourbon. You're talking.
It is, and everybody seems to have their own favorite bourbon or distillery. And the other thing that I've noticed about being in Kentucky is that the master distillers are very accessible, and everybody has a story about a master distiller. So
how'd you broach this? I mean, when you're going in, I'm going to write this cookbook. It's going to be about bourbon. Where do you begin?
Well, the whole idea started down in New Orleans, Louisiana. I was actually at the Dickie Brennan Bourbon House, which is on Bourbon Street, and I grew up in New Orleans. And there was this was in 2008. A master distiller was doing a dinner, and it was a sort of a bourbon pairing. And I walked out of the dinner wondering how chefs were using bourbon in cooking. And because there was so much bourbon that night, both in the food and then pairing it, that I wondered. And so I started asking questions.
What is it about bourbon that adds and or detracts or contributes to a meal or to cooking?
Well, I've found that bourbon only adds to a meal. I mean, it enhances things. Alcohol by its very nature is a flavor enhancer, so it enhances the flavor of food anyway. But then bourbon adds special notes, butterscotch, cinnamon, absolutely wonderful flavors, and it only enhances the food. So
it's a good thing.
It is.
Do you have a favorite? Can you even say that?
Oh, a favorite recipe? I have several favorite recipes for different reasons. Let's see. One I sort of came up with. I figured since bourbon's sort of a southern part of Southern cuisine.
Sure, and culture.
Exactly. I needed to have a biscuit. And so what I did was what I call the angel share biscuit. And for distillers, the angel share is the part of the whiskey that disappears in the warehouse.
Okay.
So they put the barrels up for a while, and there's evaporation of bourbon. Well, when you add bourbon to biscuits and then put them in the oven, the bourbon evaporates because of the heat.
Okay.
And so there's the flavor's left behind, but none of the alcohol is.
Huh.
So that was kind of one of my favorites. But the French toast is absolutely fantastic.
Doesn't that sound wonderful? French toast made with bourbon?
Right.
Oh my.
Bourbon French
And again,
toast.
so those who are shrieking, who maybe don't imbibe, are saying, but you're saying that the bourbon burns off, it's not going to the alcohol.
Most of the time, there are a few recipes in here where the bourbon's going to stay behind, but for the most part, most of the alcohol is going to burn away.
Now, you're a master chef, so you have to test out these recipes, right? Okay, which is probably fun. But how do you at what point do you say, okay, we got it, we're there?
Well, some of the recipes came from friends, and so what I did was try to represent their recipes as best I could, and tried to stay true to their recipe and their vision. But then some of the others where I developed and sort of tested in the kitchen, I tested all of the recipes, even the ones from the friends, and tweaked them a little bit. But once it tastes good, you just don't mess with it.
But that's your taste buds.
Correct.
Yes. So how do we the consensus?
I have a family, so my wife, who's very, very picky, tasted them, and then also my sons, the ones that I felt were appropriate. They tasted too, and they were real honest. They would say, ooh, yuck, or they would say, ooh, this is a good one. But the flavor of bourbon is so fantastic that really there were very few that we rejected.
Didn't hit the mark.
Correct.
As a master chef, is that something that chefs aspire to in general, is to eventually, one day I'm going to have a cookbook?
Well, I think all chefs would like to think that they could produce a cookbook at some point, and a lot of times it's sort of representative of what you've done in your past or how you're influenced. I grew up in New Orleans, Louisiana, and sort of moved around the country, and so I pick up a little thing, various things throughout the country. And the latest influence, the last 12 years, has been the bourbon. So.
Well, and I think with all the proliferation of the Food Network and those kinds of things, people really even though they didn't know they were, they've become foodies, and they really enjoy now cooking. So that's helped what you do, I suspect.
Oh, sure. Well, yeah, I teach at a university, and we have tons of students, and they're all, the Food Network is probably their biggest influence. So they see Giada De Laurentiis and Rachel Ray and Alton Brown, and they want to be those people.
So new appreciation for food. What do you have left? What's the next one going to be? From bourbon to?
Well, I'm actually working on 2 projects. One's going to be on Kentucky cuisine, and the other one is going to be on cocktails. So I'm going where I did cocktails and a little bit of Kentucky cuisine. I'm sort of going in 2 different directions.
Do you have a favorite cocktail?
Oh gosh, I absolutely love the old fashioned, which is made with bourbon, and I also love the Manhattan. So, and the sealback cocktail.
And then of course there's the mint julep.
Love the mint julep. So
we'll leave it on that note.
Okay.
Loves the mint julep. We've been talking with author Albert Schmid and master chef about his Kentucky Bourbon Cookbook. From the Southern Kentucky Festival of Books 2011, I'm Barbara Deeb.